Good morning, Kuhner country. Okay, my friends, I rarely do this. Honestly, I rarely do this. We had talked about, obviously, the bombshell memo that was released from both the Department of Justice and the FBI. We talked about it for a good part of yesterday's show. And normally, once we've talked about something, I move on because there are other stories, very important stories. This story, however, just will not go away. It will not go away. In fact, if anything, it has gotten even bigger since we were on the air yesterday. Pressure now is building, and this is coming now straight from MAGA, from Trump's base, from Trump's most ardent, staunch supporters. They are very unhappy with Pam Bondi and, frankly, FBI Director Kash Patel and Deputy Director Dan Bongino. And I got to tell you, I'm part of it. If you were following me on X last night, Pam Bondi now needs to go. And I'll tell you why. She's involved in a clear cover-up. She lied to us. She misled us. And I believe now it is time for her to be held accountable. Look, here is now the absolute latest. Over the weekend, the Department of Justice, along with the FBI, and this was signed off specifically by Attorney General Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, FBI Director, and Dan Bongino, Deputy FBI Director. So they are now presenting a united front in which they say they have concluded their investigation into Jeffrey Epstein, the convicted pedophile and sex offender. And according now to their final investigation and conclusion, they say that Epstein was not murdered, that he committed suicide, as the narrative was laid out years ago. So they're keeping up with that false pretense. But even worse, they say that there is no client list. There never was a client list. And not only was there never a client list, but listen now to this, that Epstein never blackmailed anybody. And so they now say there is no need to release any more of the FBI files on Epstein, that there is no need to release any more evidence, any more documents, anything, that this will now be sealed. It will be put away permanently, never to be discussed or touched again. Furthermore, according to the memo that they released, not only did Epstein commit suicide, not only is there no client list, and again, never was one, and he never blackmailed anybody, but listen to this, there is no evidence, according to this memo, that there were third parties involved on so-called Orgy Island or at Epstein's mansion, that they are able to go and prosecute for sex crimes or child rape. In other words, no one is going to be held accountable for anything. Anything. There will be no prosecutions. No one's going to jail. No names are going to be named. This is all going to be swept under the rug. Look, no one's buying this. This is the mother of all cover-ups. This screams cover-up. In fact, it's not even a good cover-up. It's a bad cover-up. It's, as I said on X, this is such a bad cover-up, it's insulting to our intelligence. So, just to set the record straight, in February, in an interview with Fox News, Attorney General Pam Bondi, this was with Steve Doocy on Fox, was asked specifically, and I'm going to read to you straight from the interview, whether the Justice Department would release, quote, the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients, unquote, i.e. the client list. Pam Bondi's response, quote, it's sitting on my desk right now to review. She then said that once she was done reviewing it, redacting some of the names of the victims. She says there are a lot of child pornographic images or inappropriate images, nude pictures or sexual pictures of underage girls. Once they redacted all of that, they were going to release it to the American people. Now she's telling us that there is no client list and there never was a client list. So were you lying then or are you lying now? That is the most obvious point. Now, and they can't answer that. Furthermore, it gets even worse. Ghislaine Maxwell said there's a client list. Jeffrey Epstein himself admitted, they called it the Black Book. Jeffrey Epstein himself said there's a client list. Epstein's own lawyer said there was a client list. In fact, at Ghislaine Maxwell's trial, and remember, she was convicted for the sex trafficking of underage girls and boys, minors, in which there were, quote, thousands of victims, where you had dozens and dozens and dozens of victims testify that they were raped, they were sexually abused, they were sexually exploited by dozens and dozens and dozens of some of the most powerful men in the world. It's in her testimony. It's part of the trial. Suddenly now, no one's going to be held accountable? Suddenly now, what? Those people weren't on the client list? Is this what they're trying to tell us now with a straight face? So what? That all the victims are lying? They are protecting child rapists. That's what they're doing. It's obvious he was blackmailing people. Why was he videotaping everything? Why did he have cameras in bathrooms, in bedrooms? Why did he keep a vault of all of this damaging, incriminating information? For what purpose? Of course, to blackmail. There's no question, to blackmail. And now they do a complete 180-degree turn, telling us now that Epstein committed suicide, and I'm going to get to this soon, which is a complete lie. But suddenly now, this client list never existed? Kash Patel, prior to becoming FBI director, repeatedly said not only was Epstein murdered, and clearly murdered, but he said that Epstein and the FBI was covering up what Epstein was doing, and that it was time for the FBI, Kash Patel's words, to put on their, quote, big boy pants and go after the pedophiles and the child rapists that they were protecting and covering up for. Dan Bongino on his show, and this guy, I'm sorry, I will never trust this guy again. Absolutely. To me, he has lost all credibility. How many shows did he do that Epstein was murdered? That Epstein was part of a larger pedophile sex trafficking network that involved some of the most powerful people in the world. Now, all of a sudden, he signs off on this disgusting cover-up? This is not about Jeffrey Epstein. This is about protecting some of the most powerful, influential people in the world, pedophiles, who raped and abused children. And now they're telling us that these people can do whatever they want with impunity. And what did Pam Bondi and Kash Patel and Dan Bongino promise us? That they would finally bring accountability and transparency to the Department of Justice, to the FBI, that they would release the Epstein files, that we would finally know the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth about who really runs our country and what's really been going on behind the scenes with our leaders and some of the most powerful people in government, in business, in Hollywood, in pop culture. And instead, they are now allowing all of them to skate and get away with some of the most unspeakable crimes you could imagine. Raping a child, molesting a child, or exploiting underage boys and girls is maybe the worst possible thing outside of murder. I think it's the worst possible thing you can do to somebody. Pam Bondi lied. And I don't know about you, but I am seriously getting tired of constantly being lied to. She lied to us. She lied to the victims. She lied to the American people. And I believe it is time for her to go. I'm with Laura Loomer on this all the way. I'm with most MAGA influencers on this all the way. She needs to resign. And Kash Patel and Dan Bongino should be ashamed of themselves. If they had any honor whatsoever, they would resign. Okay, just very quick. The lines are jammed. I want to take as many calls on this as possible. I really want Kuhner Country to weigh in on this. This is a momentous moment now in Trump's presidency, and I think really for our country. And I think people misunderstand and misread the Epstein scandal. It's not about Jeffrey Epstein. I get a lot of people who text me and email me and say, oh, who cares about Jeffrey Epstein? You know, he's dead, whatever. You believe he committed suicide, he was killed, it doesn't matter. Yes, he molested underage girls. Yes, he molested children. We know that. Let's move on. We've got bigger fish to fry. And no, Epstein was at the epicenter of a pedophile network that, like an octopus, has tentacles in the highest levels of our government, of our politics, of our corporate world, of our economy, of our culture, of Hollywood. Look, it's all coming out. Former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, as an example, just to give you one example, according to the Daily Mail, was seen with Epstein over 36 times during 4 years. Regularly went to Epstein Island, was caught wearing a mask to hide his identity to get into his infamous mansion in New York, where Epstein threw some of the most notorious parties involving kids and underage girls. I'm just giving you an example. You're talking about President Bill Clinton being serviced by underage girls, caught on camera, where he was clearly being blackmailed. That's the former president of the United States and one of the most powerful leaders in the Democratic Party with massive influence. Bill Gates repeatedly went to Orgy Island, as it was called, forgive me, and with underage girls. There's no disputing this. In fact, it was a key reason behind the divorce. His own wife said he wouldn't stop going to Orgy Island. He wouldn't stop hanging around with Jeffrey Epstein and the parties that they threw, where you had and look, we're talking about 1,000 victims. Many of them were lured. Many of them were drugged. Many of them were groomed. Some of them, forgive me, this is very lurid stuff, were literally put in sex dungeons and repeatedly raped and assaulted by some of the most powerful men in the world. So what we're talking about is a ring of pedophiles, of child abusers, of child rapists, who were clearly, as the Russians say, kompromat, who were being compromised by Epstein and those who ran him and controlled him. And they were clearly being blackmailed. And one of the people that people highly suspect is Chief Justice John Roberts. I mean, I could go on and on. The names that people say are on that list, it's a who's who. So this is not about Jeffrey Epstein. This is about the globalist elites that run our country, run our society, and in many ways run the world. And they're covering up for them. Now, let me just say this right up front, okay? I'm sorry, but to me, the conclusion is inexorable. Jeffrey Epstein, I believe, was controlled by the CIA, by the FBI, and by Mossad. The CIA and the Mossad work very closely together. They have done this in many places, many countries, very often, where they will use blackmail to co-opt people, to control people, to manipulate people, to get them to do what they want them to do. And I think there's no question. I mean, that's why we need a thorough, honest investigation. When did the CIA and the deep state reach out to Epstein and use him, and he was used, in order to spy on, incriminate, blackmail, and get into very compromising positions some of the most powerful people, not just in America, but in the world? Now, let me just play two cuts, and then I want to go to the phone lines. This is Pam Bondi. Now, remember, I read you the back and forth. So she goes first on Fox and Friends and is specifically asked about the client list and says, yes, I have it. It's on my desk. I'm reviewing it. This so-called, it's non-existent. It doesn't exist now. Never did. She then does a follow-up interview with John Roberts. He asks again, pretty much the same question. Roll cut 32, Mike.
The DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients? Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump. I'm reviewing that. I'm reviewing JFK files, MLK files. That's all in the process of being reviewed because that was done at the directive of the president from all of these agencies.
Again, so the president gave a directive, not just the JFK files, the Martin Luther King files, but the Epstein files. And again, I can play you it again. Robert says, you have the client list. Are you going to release it? And she says, yes. So twice. There's more times, but I'm just giving you the 2 times on Fox. So, and by the way, and she promises, again, no, we're going to release it. Now they're telling us they won't release it. Now, forget the list just for a second. They won't release the Epstein files, period. That's it. We're never going to see any of this ever again. Case closed. Listen now to Comer. Comer was on a podcaster show, and he says, I know why they're going to cover up. He predicted this. He says, you're never going to see these files. Roll cut 31, Mike.
The Epstein files, obviously, that's like finding a unicorn in Washington, D.C. You have come on and talked about that on this program, just for the sake of transparency, which is very big for you. And so, in closing, any motion on that, any movement on that? We hear that there's a timeline now.
I hope James has the Epstein files, because I don't think the Department of Justice has them, or at least the Attorney General does not have them, or she would have turned them over. The President ordered them released. The Attorney General ordered them released. We all know they have not been released. And one of my biggest fears that I had, and I expressed this with Kash Patel and a lot of people, Stephen Miller, and a lot of people going into the new administration. I'm like, I hope they're not shredding documents right now. This was a few weeks before the transition. I said, I hope they're not shredding documents.
That was my bad. I should have played the cut earlier. I'm up against it. I want to play the cut. This is the chairman of the House Oversight Committee. This is the man who oversees the deep state. Comer, whatever you think about him, he knows how they work. He knows how they operate. So I'm going to play that cut on the other side and then take all of your calls. Don't touch that dial. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, very, very quick. So forgive me, because I thought we had the second half of that clip, which we don't, whereby Comer then goes on to say, remember, this is the chairman of the House Oversight Committee. I don't want to repeat myself, but this is, molto importante. He oversees the CIA, the NSA, the FBI, the deep state, the intelligence community. So no one knows them better than he does. And he says, look, I think they're destroying a lot of these documents. And I said it to Kash Patel. He goes, I said it to Bondi. I said it to Stephen Miller. I said, get your hands on him now. And he said, and I think the reason why they don't want any of the Epstein files to be released, and I'm almost quoting now Kuhner verbatim. He said, because I believe he was a CIA asset. He was being used by the CIA, by our deep state, by our own government, to blackmail other very important, powerful people. And if this got out, the American people would be absolutely livid that we enabled a pedophile and his co-conspirators, other pedophiles, to exploit, rape, and abuse underage girls and children as part of a larger operation to dig up dirt and to manipulate and blackmail powerful people. He goes, the American people wouldn't stand for it. And it would lead to the mother of all political scandals. And so Kuhner said, look, I know how our government works. He mentioned the Mossad. He mentioned the British royal family, which was also heavily implicated in this, Prince Andrew. And he mentioned the CIA. And he mentioned the FBI. He goes, I know how they work here, and I know how they work in countries around the world. This is their modus operandi. This is their MO. So he says, that's why I'm telling you, you're never going to see these files. And if you remember, Bondi was confronted by that the following day. And then she said, oh, no. She started to panic. I'm going to give Kuhner a call. I'm going to give him a call. Like, what's he doing? Like, he's talking out of school. And here we are. He turned out to be completely correct. Now, whatever you think about this, here's the question I have for Pam Bondi. Why not release the files? Okay, there's no client list, so you say. Fine, release the files. He never blackmailed anybody. Fine, release the files. He committed suicide. Fine, release the files. But she doesn't want to release the files, even though she promised us she would. And Kash Patel did, and Dan Bongino did. Instead, they want to bury it. They want to seal it. They want to make sure nobody ever sees these files again. Why? Why? We're entitled to know what really happened and who was involved with the pedophile sex crimes of Jeffrey Epstein. What did you know and when did you know it? And so now you have Trump's strongest supporters demanding that Pam Bondi has to go. And so my question to you, it is the Kuhner Country poll question of the day, sponsored by Mario's. Mario's Quality Roofing, Siding, and Windows. Should Attorney General Pam Bondi resign over failure to release the Epstein files? A, yes. B, no. You can vote on our webpage, wrko.com/Kuhner, wrko.com/Kuhner, KUHN as in national ER. You can also vote via X. I'm very active, as you saw last night. My handle there, at the Kuhner Report, all one word, KUHN as in national ER. I'm a yes on this all the way. All the way. And honestly, she can take Kash Patel and Dan Bongino with her. Agree, disagree. William in Lexington. Thanks for holding, William, and welcome.
How you doing, Jeff?
I'm good. How are you, William?
I'm all right. I just have to. I don't think you should call for the firing of all three. I mean, you play the cards. There was a paper shredder out front of the New York field office way before any of them were actually, put into office. I mean, this is, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. This is at the highest order, right? So let our top people, not all of them are pedophiles, but I'm sure a lot of them are. They wouldn't have Bill Clinton in dress. You know what I mean? There's blackmail there for sure. But do you think that us peasants are going to know maybe that information is in the hands of the right people and they're using that to flip the blackmail on the communist revolution and to get things through the Supreme Court, Kavanaugh and Roberts. And, really, you distrust Dan Bongino? You think in Cash Patel, you think they're covering this up? I mean, maybe there just wasn't any information. And when someone said, well, you have the list, and she's like, it's all on my desk, I have to go through it, maybe it was just a bunch of fluff paperwork, pages and pages of crap. You know what I mean? It's like, there is people that are protecting the other people. Like I've always said, you either have pedophiles in the government or you have those who condone pedophiles in the government. It's all a blackmail scam. They're all sleeping with each other. They all have blackmail and dirt on each other. Like, do you really think that information was just left there in a file cabinet for Dan and Cash to go open it up and be like, yep, here's the list. Let's release it to the people. I just think you're, not looking at it the right way.
Well, look, William, I mean, let me just take everything one at a time. They promised us they were going to release the files. So they're breaking their promise. Now, I'm tired of being lied to. I'm sick of it. They promised us they were going to restore transparency and accountability at the Department of Justice and at the FBI. They haven't. And, because it's Cash Patel, and because it's Dan Bongino, and because it's Pam Bondi, suddenly it's okay? If this was Merrick Garland, and if this was his people, you'd be screaming bloody murder. Everybody would be screaming bloody murder. So, no. Now, as for Epstein, no, this is not a Hollywood movie. There isn't one little neat client list, with the names and the addresses and the phone numbers. But let me tell you what they have. They have tens of thousands of hours of video footage of some of the most powerful people in a very compromising positions with underage girls and children. And they're covering this up. Now, there also is a black book. Ghislaine Maxwell admitted it. Epstein admitted it. His lawyer admitted it, where they had people that were so-called clients. Now, maybe it's destroyed. We don't know. So then tell us. Tell us. If evidence was destroyed and shredded, tell us. But they're not telling us that. What they're saying is there never was a client list. It doesn't exist. Epstein never blackmailed anybody. Okay, lines are jammed. This is from Larry on Messenger, and he makes some very good points in relation to the call with William that we got from Lexington. Good morning, Jeff. Some bullet points. Number one, Pam Bondi herself said, quote, I've seen what's in the files, the Epstein files, and it's quote unquote disgusting. So it's not a pile of fluff. Number two, I don't care how big a SCOTUS ruling is. It's not worth the sacrifice of children who were victimized. I agree. On both counts, I completely agree. In other words, the argument many are using now is, well, let's take someone like Roberts, who's been, rumored to be on the list, likely to be on the list. Well, maybe now they can use this against Roberts so he can start ruling in conservative ways and have more conservative decisions, returning to the Roberts that we thought we were getting on the Supreme Court. And then number three, Larry says, my only disagreement with Congressman Comer, Chairman Comer, when he made the statement of that they're destroying all of the Epstein files and to get in there and stop them, is that Pam Bondi, Cash Patel, and Dan Bongino hadn't been confirmed yet. He said, I don't think Trump had even been sworn in yet, so they didn't have the power to seize it. That's a very good point. That is a very good point. And then he goes on to say, Jeff, I'd prefer, if what we think is true, that Chief Justice Roberts was ousted, forced to resign, rather than use the Epstein files to get him to rule for us if he's compromised, of course, allegedly. Well, that's the other thing. I mean, if he did go to Orgy Island, I don't want to use blackmail to say, hey, start ruling in the way you should be ruling. I want him out. I don't want a pedophile. I don't want a sex abuser on the Supreme Court, never mind the Chief Justice. So again, I just think a lot of the reasoning out there is I disagree with. I very strongly disagree with it. Okay, you can also text us 70470 70470. Okay, Jeff, this is, by the way, this is from 508. Jeff, it's not just Mossad and the CIA that's now trying to conceal the Epstein files. The British royal family has to bury this as well. There will be no prosecution of the pedophiles that won't involve Prince Andrew. And the royal family cannot have him jailed. It would damage the monarchy, maybe fatally right now. And that's, by the way, he paid off one of the victims, Virginia Giuffre, I believe is how you pronounce her, or Giuffre, however you pronounce her last name. He paid her off to the tune of millions of dollars. So what do you mean to tell me there wasn't blackmail? And remember, she's the one that came out, this was just a few months ago, and wrote, I am not suicidal. If I die, she said, tell my family, to my friends, if something should happen to me, I did not kill myself. And of course, she ended up dying. She was killed. And they tried to claim it was a suicide. And she's the one that said we're never going to get justice. So this just goes on and on. This is from 617. Jeff, what I find most disgusting is that they have video footage of what took place on Epstein Island and at his mansion. So all of the Johns are in the videos. Bingo. That's why, they're getting into semantics now. What's a client list? Is it a client list? Fine. Did he blackmail people? Did he not blackmail people? Okay, just release the files. You promised to release the file. Just release the files. Okay, blur out the underage victims. Fine. I want to see the John in that picture that's having sex with an underage girl. And they don't want to release that. They said it in their memo. They say, quote, there's no predicate for us to go after a third party for an investigation. In plain English, we're not going after Bill Clinton. We're not going after Bill Gates. We're not going after any of these other people that were involved. Caught on tape, molesting and diddling kids and underage girls. 617-266-6868 is the number. I'm sorry, it's sickening. It's sickening. But that's me. I want to hear from you. Vince in Germany, in Deutschland. Thanks for holding, Vince, and welcome.
Morning, Jeff.
Hi, Vince.
I didn't listen to your show yesterday. If I had known you were talking about this, I would have been on. Trump has made a deal with the devil. He truly has made a deal with the devil because they told him that if any of this stuff comes to light, it'll shake the foundation of the country. And we'll be standing alone, frankly, because what's the UK and what's Israel? I mean, they're two little specks on the planet, all right? That's what they are. It's the United States that'll bear the brunt of this. And I believe that Trump thinks that it's just too damaging to our government. We'll never recover, We'll never recover from it. We'll be a pariah in the world. And they just had the BRICS meeting, and you saw that other countries are learning to live without the U.S. and without the dollar, I believe that that's what's happening. Trump has made a deal with the devil. Because, frankly, Pam Bondi could be arrested for obstruction of justice at this point. She is obstructing justice. 14 terabytes of video evidence, she said, of child rape and molestation. You just don't pull that back. It's out there. It is completely out there. And I think that the longer they try to sit on it, the more damaging it's going to be for the country. So I think that it's a double-edged sword. They're like, if we release it, it's going to shake the foundations of the nation. But if we don't release it, maybe we'll just memory hole it and people will forget about it. I think Trump's made a calculation. He thinks that, I'll get the economy back on track, people will be happy financially, and we'll move on. But that is not going to happen. It is the fruit of the poison tree. That's what it is, Jeff. And you cannot eat the fruit from the poison tree.
Vince, I got to ask you, what do you think of Kash Patel and Dan Bongino in all of this? They both made such a big deal before they joined the Bureau, before they joined the FBI, that Epstein was murdered. They insisted on it. They said there was overwhelming evidence, and at the time they were right. And they said that they were going to release the client list, that come hell or high water, that there was a client list. It was obvious very powerful people were involved, in having in these orgies, in these sort of infamous sex parties with underage girls and children, both at the mansion in New York and, of course, on Epstein Island. And that no matter what, they were going to release all of this to the American people. It was their vow. It was their promise. It was their guarantee. And now, not only have they broken their fatal vow and fatal promise, but they're literally lying to our face, almost slapping us in the face with how obvious they're lying to us. It's almost insulting. Saying, no, what are you talking about? He committed suicide. No, hey, there's no client list. What are you talking about? What, Epstein blackmailed people? He never blackmailed people. Are they ever going to be able to recover from this in terms of their credibility?
And I'll take them separately. Kash Patel, I believe, is a first-generation American. His parents are from India, right?
Yes.
Where is he right now? He's sitting as director of the FBI. That's the American dream. Indian family moves to the United States, and their son becomes director of the FBI. Not only that, he's a lawyer. So as far as I'm concerned, his honesty is on a movable scale. You know, he was a public defender, and then he was a prosecutor, but he worked in the intelligence agencies. You know what I mean? So, like I said, his honesty goes as far as his honesty goes. Bongino, on the other hand, was never more than a frontline Secret Service agent. I don't want to downplay having that job, because that's not an easy job to get. But he was never in a supervisory position. Okay, maybe he was a lead agent on a visit somewhere where he would go out and do all the coordination, but he never sat in the front office. I think that as far as Bongino goes, he's like deer in the headlights. He knows he's out of his element, and he's just going along to get along, right? And I think, and he ain't going to have no media career to go back to. His credibility is shot. Forget it. Forget about that radio show. Forget about that podcast. I mean, they elevated him as the heir to Rush Limbaugh. You know what I mean? But I got to tell you, Kash Patel, on the other hand, I think is just selling his soul to the deep state, because he likes being the FBI director. But either one of them, you can forget about it. I wouldn't trust them as far as I could throw.
Oh, you nailed it. Vince, you nailed it. Honestly, drop the mic. I think you nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. Vince, thank you very much for that call. Look, I think clearly now, Kash and Bongino have been utterly co-opted by the deep state and utterly co-opted by the swamp. And I think they sold their soul. And now you got to pay the price. 617. I got to say, extremely disappointed in all three of them. But Kash Patel and Dan Bongino in particular, I will never, ever trust them again. 617. How you can do a complete 180 like this on everything, is, to me, how do you look at yourself in the mirror? Really? 617-266-6868. Janice on Cape Cod. Thanks for holding, Janice, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff.
Hi, Janice.
I wonder if you have given any consideration to the fact that it's possible the reason that Pam Bondi did not release the list is because Donald Trump is on the list.
Well, it's crossed my mind. I'll be very honest with you. It's crossed my mind. The only reason why I'm very confident he's not is really two reasons. Number one, if he was on that list, I'm telling you the Democrats would have released that information because they have thrown everything but the kitchen sink at him. I mean, they've gone after him on you name it, on Stormy Daniels, on the way he files his taxes, how much he, the value of his businesses, the value of his homes. They've combed millions of records. They've gone through his past again and again and again. They went to E. Jean Carroll. They got her to make these bogus allegations. So if they had anything of an incriminating nature on him, they would have lowered the boom. To me, I think there's no question. The other point is that Epstein himself, this is very important, Epstein himself said that he's got nothing on Trump. That his lawyer said, came out, and you can look it up. Please don't take my word for it, Janice. His lawyer said, he goes, you don't understand, because remember, Trump was president then. When Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted, and Epstein eventually, remember, he hung himself in August of 2019. I think it was August 9 or August 10. Don't quote me on, but it was in, early August 2019. Trump was then president. So Epstein's lawyer says, look, there's a way out for you. I can negotiate something for you, but you got to tell me, is Trump on the list? Did Trump ever visit Fantasy Island or the mansion? Do you have any compromising information on him? Was he ever there? And he said, Epstein, he goes, I asked him the question. He goes, literally 100 times. I kept asking him and asking him and asking him. And he kept yelling back at me like, how many times do I got to tell you? He was never there. I've got nothing on him. Believe me, if I had something on him, you would know about it. So Epstein was adamant that Trump was not on the list and that Trump never participated in any of these, what do you call them, sex parties. So that's why, Janice, I'm very confident that that Trump is not implicated in this. Final word to you, Janice.
You may never know, but Trump and Epstein were pretty close, so it's not surprising that Epstein would deny that Trump is on the list. You've seen the pictures of them partying and everything, right?
Yeah, but that was in the 1990s and early 2000s. And then apparently what happened is that at Mar-a-Lago, in early 2001, 2002, again, don't quote me, but it was the early 2000s, Epstein went to Mar-a-Lago and apparently hit on a 16-year-old girl that worked there and was very aggressive with her. And basically it was a form of a sexual assault. And Trump said, get out and don't ever come back again. I want nothing to do with you. And so, in other words, once you start going for underage girls, Trump's like, I draw the line. Like, no, absolutely not. So they severed their relationship. So they were not, quote unquote friends for a long time after that. They did party together. Now, the interesting thing is in the 1990s, early 1990s, Trump throws this big party and there were these NFL cheerleaders that are at the party. And, these are women and they're, 21, 22, 23, maybe 25 years old. And of course, the men in the room, their eyes are popping out of their skull, right? They're looking at all these, attractive cheerleaders. And, Trump is dancing. He was single then. He had just been divorced. He's got his suit. He's snapping his fingers. Epstein is right beside him. And he's saying, hey, look at that one. Isn't she hot? Oh, my God, is she beautiful? And you look at Epstein, and he looks like an absolute snake, a creep. Honestly, you could tell he's not interested in these women whatsoever. because they're too old. Him, they got to be maximum 14. 14 is already too much for him. He likes them 10, 11, 12 years old. 16 is his max. He won't go higher than 15, 16 years old. So you can tell, they kind of partied together, but they really didn't party together. Because Epstein was into underage girls. Trump never was. Trump was into younger women, yes, but they were women in their 20s. Anyway, Janice, thank you very much for that call. I really appreciate it. It's an infamous tape. It was, I believe, what was it? NBC was taping it at the time. And so you see it. It's Trump in a blue suit, a red tie. He's snapping his fingers. He's dancing. You see all these cheerleaders. Epstein is in jeans and some kind of a shirt. Very casually dressed. And he couldn't care less. I mean, the women could have taken all the women could have taken their clothes off and he still wouldn't have looked. They were 20 is way too old for Jeffrey Epstein. That's a grandmother for Jeffrey Epstein. Paul in Boston. Thanks for holding, Paul, and welcome.
Hey, Jeff.
Hi.
I have a theory about. Wouldn't say that they are actually trying to bury this or cover that. I think that the threat of lawsuits. I think legally, I don't think you can just spew out somebody's name and put them on a list without these guys are wealthy. They're powerful. They have lawyers. I guarantee if you visited that island, I guarantee you already contacted the DOJ, say, hey, if you mention my name or even think my name, I will slap lawsuits on you so fast. I don't know if it's all that CIA stuff. I think it's just illegally. I don't think it's the DOJ can't just spew out without somebody pressing charges or without proper going through the proper channels, like a panel, a grand jury. If you have to have, somebody making these allegations. I mean, they could leak it to the New York Times, I guess. They'd, be like the Democrats, but that's the only way they could do. I don't think they can just, and I think they just got ahead of their skis, Jeff. I think Pam Bondi and Kash Patel and just all the excitement about, we're going to release the Epstein files. And I think you really start to realize, wait a minute, there are some legal things. You just can't do that. I mean, look at Bob Kraft down at Palm Beach, goes and has a massage. That Palm Beach County Sheriff wanted to release that videotape, and guess what? Somebody has lawyers that says, no, you don't. So I think they would be in some legal hot water, and I think they were naive, Jeff. I think they were well intended, but I think they were naive about just mentioning somebody's name. You might have visited that island and for some other reason, and you might be on that list. You smear somebody like that. They're liable for, you could bankrupt the whole DOJ. You could sue them. I mean, it could be a class action suit. I think it's more complicated than just, we all know what they probably did, Jeff. There's no doubt about it. But being able to just throw it out there, hey, release the files, that's implicating. That's smearing somebody's reputation without due process.
Well, look, no, Paul, I hear you. And it's a very intelligent point. There's no question. It's a very well thought out, intelligent point. But we already know the flight manifests. Like, for example, Alan Dershowitz was on the flight manifest. So he flew to the island. So now his argument is, I didn't do anything on the island. I just flew to the island because Epstein was my client. So we already know the names of the people who went to Epstein Island, who were on the flight logs. We know that. That's been publicly released. So it's not as if they're going to be releasing something that could insinuate something. No. What they said was, we have the Epstein files, which is everything the FBI had compiled on what took place at the sex orgies. And you have people in a video, I'm sorry to be crude about this, having sex with an underage girl. Now, I don't know what else to say. Now, if you want to sue on that, go ahead and sue. You're going to lose. So No, they don't want to release the tapes. And, and notice, Paul, they're not even making that argument. They're not saying, well, we're afraid of lawsuits. They're not saying that. They're not saying, you know what, we kind of got ahead of ourselves here. I wanted to release the files, but we've spoken to our lawyers, and this opens us up to potential lawsuits and legal liability and blah, 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 blah. And so we're just not going to do it. No, they're not saying that, because they would be laughed at. Because what she said she had originally is what she has. She has, quote, disgusting pictures and disgusting videos of men having sex with children and underage girls. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, case closed. I mean, literally, case closed. So the Department of Justice, the FBI, with statements from all three, the three amigos, Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, and Dan Bongino, now say that Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. And I'm going to give you the reasons they now say that he committed suicide, but I want to take more calls before I do that. That there was no client list, there is no client list, there never was a client list, and that there is no incriminating evidence against any third party. That Epstein never blackmailed anybody. And they say they will not release any more files, any more documents, any more information whatsoever. That as far as they're concerned, all of the Epstein files from this point forward are going to be sealed away somewhere in some vault, never to be touched again. And in their memo, the DOJ memo that they released to the public, they were adamant on this point, that they will not investigate or prosecute, quote unquote, any third parties involved. So basically, all of the perpetrators, all of the criminals that were involved in this pedophile sex trafficking network and who participated in these orgies, these sex parties, they're clean. They're going to skate. They're going to get away. They're going to get away with it completely. So there you go. That's the long and the short of it. Now, I think I'm with many in MAGA. I think Pam Bondi now needs to go. She has to resign. If not, she should be fired. She lied to us. She's a fraud. And I believe she's now engaging in the mother of all cover-ups. 617-266-6868 is the number. Agree, disagree. This is from Eric on Messenger, and I think he makes a very good point. Jeff, I'm sorry, but I don't accept any of their excuses for no prosecutions. They have so much more evidence than against the Catholic Church. There's no question. There was a lot of evidence against the Catholic Church. Please don't get me wrong. But you don't have thousands, in fact, tens of thousands of hours of videotape footage, photographs, images. We could go on and on. Cameras in bathrooms, in bedrooms, in sex dungeons. Come on. You've got him 6 ways to Sunday. And even if you don't want to prosecute him, give us the names. Release the files. But they don't want to release the files at all, which means they're protecting the Johns. Okay? They're protecting the child rapists, the pedophiles that participated in all of this. And to me, I'm sorry, but that breaks their seminal pledge to us. They promised us transparency. They promised us openness. They promised us accountability. We're getting none of it. 617-266-6868. Agree, disagree. Daryl in the great state of Georgia. Thanks for holding, Daryl, and welcome.
Thanks, Jeff, for taking my call.
My pleasure.
I got a little perspective. I first want to address the two amigos before I address the wannabe Barbie doll. On Dan Bongino's show, I listen to his show just like yours quite a bit, especially when I'm driving my truck. And on so many different podcasts that he talked tough and had Cash Patel, and Cash Patel's been on different podcasts. They spoke so tough of what needs to happen, and they was talking for sure about how Epstein didn't commit suicide. They want the list released. But if you watch that interview with Maria Bartiromo, they kind of remind me of some of those hostages been set in a chair with a camera on them. Somebody's pointing a gun at them, and they're reading the script. They look so uncomfortable when she asks them about that. It's like they've been threatened or something. Or, like I said, you get in, talk tough, and then you see the deep state is a lot deeper, and they give you a little ultimatum. They said, man, it's real sad to tell your wife what happened to you about that accident you had, and it's the accident they're going to arrange. That's the impression I get from them. I could be wrong, but they just do not look very comfortable. And as far as that Barbie doll wannabe, she didn't do enough when James Comey's daughter was also affiliated with that field office in New York, and they had to fire the director there before they finally got in there and got some of the stuff. And when she said it's on her desk, they're redacting it, that kind of tells me when they say they're redacting because of the names in there and the nature and the graphics of it. And it was rumored, this was a couple years back after he was killed. I say he was killed. They said it wasn't just underage girls, but underage boys as well. And so some of these Johns in there, they said these are very powerful people. So I'm not surprised that nothing's going to happen. I don't think anything's going to happen. There's going to be a whole lot of smoke, and it's going to fade away. That's just the way I feel, because you got too much money involved. And when you get that many powerful people, millionaires, billionaires, royalty, it's like they can't let that information come out. I mean, these what happened is these youngsters just going to have to be sacrificed, but nothing's going to happen. I don't believe so.
That's what's going to happen. You're completely right. And that's what they're telling us is going to happen. That's what's so outrageous about this memo. They're telling us, yeah, there's going to be no justice for all the victims. None. So to hell with it. I mean, to me, that's what I mean. It turns my stomach. And, Daryl, look, you touched on something. That's the rumor. Okay, and I don't like to talk rumors, but that's the rumor, that Kash Patel and Dan Bongino were threatened and that their families were threatened. And that's why that infamous interview with Maria Bartiromo, you see them sweating, you see them looking away from the camera. They look very awkward, very uncomfortable. Now, look, my counter argument, and I'm not trying to play games, I'm being honest. We're talking now about the state of our republic. We're talking about the integrity of our justice system. We're talking about thousands of sex victims. 617-266-6868 if you want to be part of the show. Okay, two very quick points. I'm going to go right back to the blazing phone lines. This is from Julian Assange. Okay, this is what he wrote in reaction now to the decision by Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, and Dan Bongino, the FBI and the DOJ, to literally close the case on the Epstein files. They're now claiming it. The official line now is he committed suicide. There never was a client list. There is no client list. It never existed. It's a figment of all our imaginations. And he never blackmailed anybody. Oh, and no one is going to get prosecuted. No one. And they're going to put all the information somewhere, bury it, and that's it. It's done. Here is what Julian Assange said. Quote, the reason the FBI wouldn't let the Epstein client list come out in court is because if they did, their blackmail would no longer be useful. And the CIA would lose their control over all the powerful people they spent decades setting up. I don't agree with Assange on much, but on this, I'm with him. And if you notice, during the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, they refused to hand over the client list. Now, they didn't say during the Ghislaine Maxwell trial that there was no list. They just said they refused to hand it over. Now, isn't that interesting? So, Pam Bondi said there was a list repeatedly. Ghislaine Maxwell said there was a list. Epstein said there was a list. His lawyer said there was a list. In the court case with Ghislaine Maxwell, the FBI tacitly admitted there was a list because when asked about the list, they didn't say there's no list. They said we're not going to hand it over. Now, one other point that needs to be mentioned. When Dick Durbin, okay, he's now going to retire, but, a couple of years ago, Senator, Democrat, uber liberal Democrat, okay, Dick Durbin from Illinois, when he was chair of the House Judiciary Committee in the Senate, he refused to allow the Epstein list to be released to the public. So even he said there was a list. He saw the list or he knew about the list, and he refused to have the FBI release the list. Now, I can do this for 4 hours. So after a while, who's lying? In other words, is the whole world crazy or are you crazy? Well, I got news for you. The world isn't crazy. So is the whole world lying or is Pam Bondi lying? I don't think the whole world is lying. So, no, there was a list. It's obvious there's a list. And they're trying to now bury this. Now, one more, and then I want to go to the phone lines. 617. And by the way, to me, I think this is all, they're trying to cover up for the CIA, for the FBI, for Mossad. They were involved together in this, and the British royal family, and God knows who else. Matt Gaetz has come out and said that he believes that, he says Epstein was clearly killed. He goes, there's no question that Epstein was killed, that Bondi, Patel, and Bongino are lying about Epstein's death, saying it was a suicide. Gaetz is saying, look, you want my honest opinion? It's just an opinion. I think it was a foreign government that took him out. So he's saying he was taken out, but, maybe the royal family, who knows? They wanted him removed. He was a clear and present danger to many powerful people. Now, I want to read this because honestly, this sums up my experience in Washington when I was there at the Washington Times, covering Congress, covering the White House, being an assistant editor on the national page, the national section of the Washington Times. And it's from 781. Jeff, you know this better than most. Once someone ascends to a high position in government in Washington, the thinking becomes this, quote, if I do what I'm told, I keep climbing and I get wealthier. If I do what is principled, I get treated the way Trump was treated. I choose door number one. 1,000% correct. That's one of the things that frankly turned my stomach, disgusted me during my decade that I was, in fact, just over a decade that I was in Washington, D.C. when I covered politics. It's, if you just go along to get along, you are going to keep climbing and rising. Just do what you're told. You have to cover something up, you cover it up. You have to lie, you lie. If you have to smear and libel and destroy somebody, you'd smear, libel, and destroy somebody. You do whatever you got to do. But if you do it, you will keep rising and you will get unimaginably wealthy with a lot of power. But if you try to be a person of principle and try to speak truth to power, you get destroyed. In other words, you get the Donald Trump treatment. The difference being, most people are not multi-billionaires who can withstand that kind of punishment and beating and constant assassination attempts the way Trump did. That's the difference. So, look, that's why I'm telling you, I'm speaking from such conviction here. Again, you may disagree with me. I'm just, being open and honest with all of you. I'm speaking from the heart. I know the immense temptation. Just do what they want you to do. Just go along with this. Pam Bondi, Pam, you got a big media career ahead of you. A lot of consulting. You and your family are going to make so much money. You're going to have so much fame, so much visibility. Just cover this up. That's all we're asking. Same thing with Kash Patel and Dan Bongino. Don't worry. You're going to have more money than you could ever imagine. And you'll be running the FBI. You know what kind of power that is? Just bury this. Sweep this under the rug. Okay? You scratch our back, we scratch your back. That's the swamp. In action right in front of our eyes. Jim on the Cape. Thanks for holding, Jim, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff.
Hi, Jim.
I agree completely with the previous caller who was mentioning that he thought that Bongino and Cash had been threatened, the Maria Bartiromo interview. And I also, that's what I think it is. I think that the CIA is the most evil agency on the face of the earth. I think they're globalists. They're absolutely terrible, and they threaten them. I think they're responsible for attempting to kill Trump, both assassination attempts, and I think that basically they're running everything. That's honestly what I believe. And I liked your response as to they should just come out and say that. But I don't know. I just don't know how easy it is. It seems like everybody connected to this case ends up dead. All the witnesses around the world. It just seems like that happens on a pretty regular basis.
Jim, you're making a fascinating point. Can you please do me a favor? I'm up against a break. Okay, let's go right back to Jim on the Cape. Jim, you said you agreed with one of the previous callers who stated that Kash Patel, Dan Bongino look like they're being blackmailed. Certainly, if you look at that infamous interview now with Maria Bartiromo, where they were very awkward, very uneasy. They did not look comfortable at all, saying that this was a suicide by Jeffrey Epstein, that he wasn't murdered. They didn't seem themselves. They almost looked like it was a hostage situation, or that someone was, holding a gun to their heads or to that of their families. Jim, let me just press this a little bit further, if you don't mind. Are you convinced that the CIA, and you're right, they play dirty. They play extremely dirty. They are absolutely ruthless. And they have a 60-year history of being absolutely ruthless. Do you think the CIA is blackmailing or threatening or extorting Bongino and Kash Patel? In other words, if you know what's good for you, if you know what's good for your family, I would let this go. Is that your sense, Jim?
Yes, that's exactly what I was trying to say. That there's no doubt in my mind, none, because I've watched Cash I'm a big War Room fan. Benny, you. Those are my three news things, and I've watched Kash Patel. I love that man, and I know. I watched him talk about all these subjects, and I know deep down in my heart that I think they're all being threatened. And I think the CIA is, like I said, evil and frightening. And I think they also were involved in trying to kill President Trump. No doubt. That's just me. I don't know.
Well, Jim, let me ask you this, because look, I really, to me, the CIA is a cancer on our country. To me, you're completely correct, and I wouldn't put anything beyond them. But let me just ask you this: if that's the case, okay, let's just play the scenario out. You're being threatened. You're either the FBI director, the deputy FBI director, or even the attorney general. To me, now, and again, going into this job, you're going up against very powerful vested interests. So you're not just taking over some middle management position at a private company. You're going up against the deep state. You're going up against the intelligence community. So they're going to be going for your throat. So they should have gone in with their eyes wide open. If they believe what they've been saying for the last couple of years, how the CIA and the deep state destroy people, literally destroy people. So what, you think they're just going to lay down for you because you're suddenly the FBI director or the deputy? So, number one, I have to ask myself, do they even really know what they were getting themselves into? That's number one. Number two, do they really believe what they're saying? And number three, and I think this is to me the heart of the matter, when someone threatens me, I always blow the whistle. When someone comes after me or my family, I make it public right away. Right away. I have nothing to hide. You're not going to cower me. You're not going to intimidate me. You're not going to bully me. You're not going to scare me. You're not going to frighten me. And so if I go public, then I put those who are trying to intimidate me, okay, these criminals, I put them on the defensive. Now they're no longer in the shadows. They're out in public. So what I don't understand is, why doesn't Dan Bongino or Kash Patel or both of them? Think about blowing the lid off of the deep state. If they come out and said, you want to know the truth? We've been threatened over the Epstein files. They threatened us. They threatened our children. They threatened our families. They threatened our wives. And this is how these people play. That's what they're willing to do now to try to cover up this scandal. You would blow them out of the water. You want to talk about game, set, and match. You would paralyze them. You would turn everything on them. This would force everybody to concentrate and focus and discuss this issue. I think it would break the back of the deep state. But instead, if you cower, if you appease, if you accommodate, then you're done. They've broken you. And it seems to me they've broken all three. Am I wrong, Jim?
No, you're absolutely right, Jeff. I believe that, actually, I never thought of that. What you said a couple segments ago, you mentioned that. You said they should go public with it. I had never thought of that alternative, but you're absolutely right. And that's what needs to happen, because it would blow the top off the deep state. And that's what needs to be done, because that's the enemy. So I don't know. Thank you very much,
Jim.
Jeff.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Very good call, Jim. No, look, on a much smaller level, here, let me just be very candid with you. Of course, they're going to go after you. We're not talking about trillions of dollars, the entire deep state CIA empire that is at stake, and the blackmailing of some of the most powerful people in our country and in the world, so that the CIA can control these people, okay? So we're not just talking about that. I'm talking about just here in Boston. I'm not talking Washington. I'm not talking the United States. I'm not talking the world. I'm not talking about globalism. I'm talking about just here in Boston. The vicious attacks that I have received, frankly, the threats that I have received from scumbag politicians and the scumbag media in this state, Herald, and people affiliated with the Boston Herald and the Boston Globe. And they're coming after me. And by the way, lies, smears, vicious, to take me off the air, to destroy me professionally, to spy on me, literally hire a detective to follow me and my family. Okay? That's the kind of stuff that they do. And they're protecting thousands of dollars. Not millions, not even hundreds of thousands. But this sleazy pay-to-play operation that they have running with these losers on the Mass GOP committee, or these losers in the establishment Massachusetts Republican Party. Literally, I'm talking about 2,000 here, 4,000 here, 1,500 here, $5,000 there. I mean, in the larger scheme of things, peanuts. And I'm telling you, it works. You wouldn't believe it. It works. That's why people smear. It works. You lie, and you just keep smearing and smearing and smearing. And you know what I realized after a while? You can be the most honest man, the most principled man on the planet. Once you start getting smeared, you know what most people in the public say? They're both to blame. There's got to be something to both sides. Very few people are able to discern and say, well, no, here's an honest man, a principled man who's standing up for the truth and honesty and integrity. And you got these corrupt people, in this case, in the media, completely corrupt, who are in the tank, either for the Democratic Party or for the rhinos. And they pretend to be Trump supporters, but just follow the money. And they will destroy people just to protect their little niche, just to protect the fact that they're making a little bit of money and lining their pockets. So this is almost petty corruption compared to the massive, unimaginable corruption that you see in places like Washington. So I'm just telling you, I've seen it, I've heard it, I've been the victim of it myself. And I'm being honest with you, I'm bearing my soul like I'm in the confessional. It's not easy to stand alone. It's not. It's just, there you are. You just stand alone and you know that they keep coming after you. And they're constantly plotting and scheming and doing everything they can to undermine you, to destroy you. So, yeah, you just say, even for the sake of peace, you just say, you know what, for peace of mind, okay, let me just let it go. Just let it go. So, look, when you make a promise to the American people that you are going to restore constitutional government, you are going to restore the rule of law, you are going to restore justice and truth to the Justice Department and the FBI. To me, my word is my bond. If I'm going to do something, I do it. If not, I won't. And if I'm being threatened, I'll either resign. If my wife and my children say, look, Daddy, please, enough, I'll resign. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to stand there and put my name on a bull crap, you know what I was going to say? I can't say it. A Bravo Sierra, a BS memo, and lie to the American people, to you. I couldn't live with myself. I would just resign. I'd say, I want to release the Epstein files, and I'll let me release the Epstein files, and I'm resigning. Bye. That's all. That's all. Or I would stand there and say, they're threatening me. In other words, we're going to go to war. This is now a fight to the finish. Let me ask all of you, if this was George Washington, what would he do? Honestly, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, Alexander Hamilton, John Adams, Samuel Adams. I could just go on. What do you think they would do? What do you think our founding fathers would do? You think they would allow a pedophile network to exist in the shadows behind the scenes? You think they would allow child rapists and child molesters to go unpunished by the most powerful people in our country and in the world? Who then, that information is being used so that they are being controlled and manipulated to act against the interests of the people and the voters? And to literally destroy our Constitution and the rule of law? Or do you think they would say, I don't care. Whatever price needs to be paid, I will pay it. But we're going to clean house. We're going to have honest government. We're going to get our republic back. So to me, the crisis in America today, I don't want to sound preachy, but I'm just speaking from the heart. It's a crisis of character. And again, if I can really be honest with you, I'm tired of these BSers. They all talk a big game. All of them. They wear their cowboy hats and their cowboy boots, and they do their shtick on their podcast or their talk show, and big macho men. And I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. And it's time to deliver, and look at them. Look at them. Honest to God, a bunch of cowards. Gutless cowards. I'm not saying take a bullet. I'm not saying die for your job. But for God's sakes, don't lie. You know, people often say this to me. Oh, come on, Jeff. You want Mother Teresa in office. No, I just don't want Caligula. I'm sorry. Don't be a whore. Don't be a whore. If you make a promise that you're going to restore accountability and transparency, if you're going to make a promise that pedophiles and child rapists and child molesters are going to be exposed, and you're going to release the client list, and you're going to release their names and the Epstein files, then do what you promise. And if you're being threatened, then just resign. But now you're implicated because now you're part of the cover-up. You see, now you become mired in Jeffrey Epstein's dirt. Now, in some ways, you're almost as guilty as Epstein. Because now you're actively covering up his crimes. And more importantly, the crimes of his co-conspirators and co-criminals and co-perpetrators. You're covering up for Bill Clinton. You're covering up for Chief Justice John Roberts. You're covering up for Bill Gates. I could go on and on about the names. You're covering up now for all of them. I don't want that on my conscience. When I die, the most important thing to me in my life, that's why nobody gets me. And I've said this many times, I'm going to say it again. Life is not about this world. Life is about the next world. People keep misunderstanding that. This world, I don't care how long you live, 20 years, 40 years, 80 years, however long you live, in the span of infinity, in the span of the universe, it's nothing. It's a speck. It goes by like this. To me, I don't want to meet my maker and have him look at me and say, and you covered up for child rapists and child molesters? You abandoned and betrayed the children? Listen, I'm not sacrificing my soul. My soul is not for sale. Period. Full stop. And so, if Trump's people are listening, and if Bongino and Kash Patel happen to be listening, or their people are listening, you tell them, from me, whatever they've offered you, it's not worth it. And sometimes, if you don't want to fight, I understand. You don't want to go to war with the deep state. I understand. You've got wives, you've got children, you've got families. I get it. Resign. Step down. But for God's sakes, don't dirty your hands with this lie and this cover-up. 617-266-6868. Agree, disagree. Diane in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Diane, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff.
Hi,
Thanks
Diane.
for taking my call.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Well, I think we have two key words here. One is power and one is lawfare. I think we have a lot of very wealthy, very powerful people behind this. I do believe there is a client list. Absolutely agree with that. I absolutely agree that Epstein was murdered in prison. But all these powerful people that are probably more than likely on the client list also have very powerful lawyers and corrupt lawyers who know how to get around the law and keep things out of the public. And I think that Democrats, for instance, won't go after this, won't go after the Trump administration, because they know the list has prominent Democrats as well as Republicans on it. So they're not going to touch it with a 50-foot pole. I think it's, unfortunately, we have to be realistic and understand that it's the honest people who get destroyed. There is no, how can I say this? If they believe that, I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous here.
No, you shouldn't be nervous, Diane. You're among friends. Look, let me just say one thing, and you can just, just gather your thoughts a little bit. Look, you're right. It's the honest people that get destroyed. You're completely right. That goes all the way back to Jesus. Again, they asked, remember, Pontius Pilate gives the crowd a choice. You can have a criminal, a murderer, and a thief. Okay, you don't get lower than that. Barabbas or Jesus. He goes, I'll free one of them. You pick. Everybody forgets that. I mean, I'm not a defender of Pontius Pilate. Please don't get me wrong. But Pontius Pilate, again, just to the biblical story, he goes, look, one of these two is going to walk out free. You pick. You decide. Jesus or Barabbas. The crowd yelled out Barabbas. So give us a criminal, give us a murderer, give us a thief, and crucify this innocent man. So that goes there's something it's not just that it goes back to Jesus, it's something almost very powerful in human nature. This propensity for evil, this propensity towards original sin, okay? And you've seen it all throughout history, what happens to good, decent, innocent people over and over and over again. You're completely right. You're completely right. That's why it is so hard to be good, decent, and innocent, because you always pay a tremendous price. Okay, that's just a fact of life. And you're also completely correct. There's no question in my mind that this implicates Democrats and Republicans, and very powerful Republicans. So you're looking now at the political class being brought down, if this comes out, all around us. It may even bring down the country. Look, let me just say this, Diane. Not that this person is a prominent politician, but in one of the British newspapers, and frankly, the British newspapers have been much better on this issue. They have been reporting it very aggressively. They have been reporting stuff that the people that are supposedly on the list, they've been pushing this story much harder than the cowards in the American media here. There is a picture, I'm just going to say this, of the U2 singer, the frontman, Bono, who was a friend of Epstein. He's at Epstein Island. He's in a hot tub. On his left is clearly an underage girl in a bikini, and on the right is a clearly underage girl in a bikini. And let me put it to you this way. I'd never have put my arm around a woman the way he did those two girls, except with my wife. Okay? So he's got his arms around these two girls. Now, I'm not going to say anything more. But I'm looking at this, and I'm like, you disgusting hypocrite. Every time you have a concert, you lecture us about paying off third world debt, about the children in Africa, about how evil capitalism is and how evil America is. And he's so self-righteous. And you're partying with a pedophile and a convicted child sex offender like Epstein? And you're at these parties, let me just leave it at this, with underage girls in very provocative bikinis? You're disgusting. You're disgusting. Okay? You're disgusting. Now, he's considered one of the kings of pop music, he's a massive celebrity, huge following, tremendous clout in the music industry. That's just one name on the list. Allegedly. Just one name. That's just one. There are hundreds of them. Hundreds of them. Now, if all of this comes out, I mean, my God, this would be the mother of all scandals. And all I'm asking for is one honest man or one honest woman. And I guess we can't find one. Okay, let me ask you. It is the Kuhner Country poll question of the day, sponsored by Mario's. Mario's Quality Roofing, Siding, and Windows. Should Attorney General Pam Bondi resign for refusing or not releasing, let's put it that way, not releasing the Epstein files? She says she's not going to release any of it, not even a scintilla. The case is closed. She's now adamant this was a suicide by Epstein. No client list, never had a client list. He never blackmailed anybody. And above all, she says no quote-unquote third party, meaning no one outside of Epstein, is going to be prosecuted in any way, shape, or form for having either assaulted, molested, or sexually exploited children or underage minors, girls, or boys. In other words, they're all outside of Ghislaine Maxwell, who's now rotting in jail and for at least, 20 years? Outside of her, no one else is going to go to jail. Which, by the way, begs the question. If there's no client list and nobody was being blackmailed and all of this is much ado about nothing, then who the hell was she trafficking all of these children, underage minors to? I mean, literally, according to the conviction, the prosecution, the government said there were, quote, thousands of victims over 20 years. Thousands. So who the hell was she sex trafficking all these kids and underage girls to? And what were they doing on Orgy Island? So all of the victims that came out, and I can play you cut after cut after cut if you want, of women, now they're now women, who say at the time they were 13, 14, 15, 16 years old, where they say they were either drugged or groomed or some of them literally kidnapped. It depends. Every girl had a bit of a different experience, but they say they were held in sex dungeons or that they were raped or they were sexually assaulted by quote-unquote very powerful men. Now, furthermore, they have mentioned the names of the men that they say, the powerful men that assaulted or exploited or raped them. The court continues to insist that they be kept under seal. So the names, they're making sure that none of these names ever get out. And so you have now literally thousands of victims saying, where is the justice for us? If you're powerful, if you're wealthy, if you're well-connected, you can now literally get away with anything, including raping children. 617-266-6868. Tim in South Carolina. Thanks for holding, Tim, and welcome.
Hi, Jeff. Good morning.
Hi.
It's great to be on your show again. I just wanted to, this is probably going to be another one of those weird phone calls, but if you go back to Thursday, let's go back to Thursday. Thursday, they passed that bill. Don't worry, I'm getting to the Epstein thing. They passed that bill that crushed them, that crushed the other side, just crushed them. In less than 48 hours on Saturday, the Texas flooding was President Trump's fault. So that's Saturday. And then by the end of Sunday, remember, this is a long weekend. This is the 4th of July weekend. By the end of Sunday, all of a sudden, especially if you read on the Twitter X, President Trump is now on the Epstein list, and that's why this whole thing is being washed. It is just interesting. We're in a war here where we crush them on Thursday, and by the time Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening comes around, and then into yesterday, Monday, he's all of a sudden the worst person in the world again, and he's not the great president he was. I'm reading people on our side who are just attacking President Trump like crazy. He's on the list. He's this. He's trying to cover it up. We're in a war here. I'm just going to cite the globalists again. They need to conquer the United States. They've conquered Europe. And when I talk about the globalists, Jeff, I'm not speaking about pollution at Revere Beach. One of your callers referenced that the other day. I'm speaking of borders, language, and culture. The other side, the enemy, they need all of it, and they need the United States. It's vital to them. Those are my thoughts.
Well, you're dead on. Look, if they can, look, there are really two powers that truly now stand in their way. One is Israel in the Middle East, because you want to talk about a country that believes in borders, language, and culture, it's Israel. And the big one is us, the United States. If the United States falls, they have their new world order. Everybody knows it. And the only man that really now stands in their way is President Trump and increasingly J.D. Vance. I've got to say, the more I read about this administration, J.D. Vance is pivotal in almost every decision that Trump makes. I like Rubio. He's doing an awesome job. Don't get me wrong. But, you know, you look at that big, beautiful bill. Vance worked his tail off. I mean, he worked night and day to get the key votes that Trump needed to get it over the top in the Senate and over the top again in the House. I'm just using one, the big, beautiful bill as an example. But on almost everything, there's JD. So increasingly now, it's these two men. But Trump, obviously, as the president, that's the man now that stands in their way. Look, I just slightly look at it differently than you, Tim, just in one aspect. I'm surprised at how muted the reaction has been from the media. Yes, there is some of it in some quarters. Oh, Trump's on the list and he's covering it up. And no, everybody knows if he was on the list, the Democrats would have released that list a long time ago. There's nothing they wouldn't do to stop President Trump. So there's no way in hell they would not have released that information. And again, I don't want to repeat myself, but Epstein, if he was adamant on one thing, he was adamant. He told his lawyer over and over and over, Trump's not on the list. Trump never went to Orgy Island. Trump never went to Fantasy Island. Trump never was involved in that sort of thing. No, I'm telling you, there's nothing to... The lawyer said, you got to give me something. He goes, there's nothing to give you. He goes, I'm telling you. If I had something, I would give it to you. So, and I think they know that. No, it's the opposite. From what I've read yesterday and today, New York Times, Washington Post, Associated Press, they're cheering. They're taunting Trump, saying, you guys were talking about Jeffrey Epstein and this network of pedophiles and the client list and all these people he blackmailed, and you're all doing a 180 now. Okay, just very, very quick. You can text us 70470, 70470. This is from 917. Jeff, you spoke earlier, about how in Washington, if you just do what you're told and lie, no matter how obvious the lie is, you will continue to rise and become very wealthy. Well, a case in point, just look at Jen Psaki. She is now pulling down $15 million a year at MSNBC. And then, of course, there's Karine Jean-Pierre, who just got an $8 million advance on a book that no one will read and will likely be joining CNN soon, where she'll be making millions and millions of dollars a year as well. So there you go. So the two spokespeople for the Biden regime, two liars, all they did was lie. And look at them now. They're going to be their TV personalities. They have their own shows. They're rich beyond their wildest imagination. And all they had to do was play ball. And these are just two. I could give you example after example after example. And that's what I mean. In some ways, the temptation is just so immense, people can't control themselves. 617-266-6868. Mike in Brighton. Thanks for holding, Mike, and welcome.
Yeah, I got another theory about the cover-up. Remember all those Republicans who opposed the big beautiful bill?
Yes.
How hard it was, and how hard it was to get them to go along with it. Here's another way maybe that happened: quid pro quo.
Well, Mike, I've heard that rumor. I mean, again, I don't like to discuss rumors, but, since we're talking about such an explosive topic like this, there are many people who are saying that the reason why Trump is wink, wink, allowing this to happen and allowing Pam Bondi and Kash Patel and Dan Bongino to engage in an obvious, blatant cover-up is because he's using this blackmail material to blackmail the deep state and many of his enemies in Washington. In other words, he's turning the tables on them. And so that's a theory that a few people close to Trump believe in. They adhere to that theory. And, their argument is, look at John Roberts lately. Everything is 6-3. It's no longer 5-4. He's making judicial ruling on very important cases that we thought he would, in other words, as a conservative, that's what we thought we were getting when he was appointed to the bench. And he hasn't been like that for a long time. But now it's like he's finding the old John Roberts again. And they're like, maybe it's because he knows Trump's got him by the tonsils. And he better play ball or else suddenly they have found the Epstein files. So you know what? Suddenly, son of a gun. That list that we said didn't exist, guess what I just found? Suddenly I opened up this box and there it is. And you've got a lot of anti-Trump Republicans, diehard anti-Trump Republicans, who vowed to vote against the big, beautiful bill. And all of a sudden, they all fell in line, every single one of them. And he racked up victory after victory, both in the Senate and in the House. So there is that theory, Mike, that Trump on this is playing, real three-dimensional chess. Yes, they were using it to blackmail others. Now I'm going to use it to blackmail them. My very enemies, the very criminals, the very CIA, the very deep state, the very establishment, the swamp that had so much incriminating, damaging information on people. Now I've got the fact that they were using it against their political enemies, against them. And I've got the incriminating evidence myself. So, and the theory is, welcome to the NFL. That's, they play hardball. It's like, like the NFL. It's smash mouth football. So they play hardball. Trump plays hardball. So that definitely is one of the theories, Mike. I take it you subscribe to that. You believe that's what Trump is doing here?
Well, I was thinking of it the other way around, that these recalcitrant Republican senators told Trump, "You want my vote? Well, you got to give me something for it."
Oh, I didn't even think of that. In other words, we'll play ball, but you got to play ball.
Right, that's what I meant by the quid pro quo.
Yeah, interesting. Well, Mike, we'll find out. I mean, I think that's the thing. Eventually it will come out. Somebody always blabs. So we'll find out if there was any kind of a quid pro quo and whether some Republican said, look, keep the list out of the public eye and you'll be amazed at how we can start voting your way. In other words, I scratch your back, you scratch my back. Mike, thank you very, very much for that call. I really appreciate it. Very interesting take. Denise in Quincy. Thanks for holding, Denise, and welcome.
I've been listening to all the information regarding Epstein, and what I find a little bit confusing is that if there isn't anything on him and he's not guilty of what he's been accused of, why would he commit suicide?
Well, look, Denise, to be fair, I think this is what the other side would say. He's definitely guilty of sexually molesting and raping and abusing children. I mean, they've got him on tape after tape after tape after tape after tape. Now, again, why would this guy be taping himself is beyond me, but let that go. Maybe he's just a sick man that way. So he was going to get convicted. He saw that Ghislaine Maxwell had gotten convicted. So if she goes, he's going to go. And I guess he didn't want to go to prison for the rest of his life. And he didn't want his name to become utterly mud, to become utterly dirt. So rather than go to court and have all of this embarrassing information, humiliating information come out, he decided to kill himself. So I think that's the argument that they would make, that he was now going to be known as a convicted child rapist and child molester. And so he didn't want to face the music, and he took the easy way out. Now, to be honest with you, Denise, I don't buy that. I'm just telling you, that's the other side's argument. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I think if a man is shameless enough to molest children and to do it for many, many decades, why at this point would he kill himself? So, no, I don't believe that he killed himself. I believe he was murdered. And I think the evidence is overwhelming that he was murdered. I think there's no question he was murdered. And just think about it. You're talking about, just think about what they want us to believe. They had a policy at the prison that he was being held at to have 2 inmates in every cell to prevent the very thing that allegedly happened. Prevent someone from committing suicide. If there's another person there, they can prevent that person from hanging himself. Conveniently, that very evening, his cellmate was removed. Why? No reason was ever given. Why? Now Jeffrey Epstein is left alone. Now, according to many forensics experts, the break of the bone in his neck could not have happened from a hanging. Only from a strangulation from the hands, meaning someone strangled him and murdered him. And then, and this is now what has just come out, you're not going to believe this, then there is missing 60 seconds on the 10-hour tape that the FBI says proves that Epstein committed suicide. Yet there's literally 1 minute that has now been edited out of that tape. So I'm gonna address that very issue, but I agree with you. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay. Caroline Leavitt, White House press secretary, was asked yesterday by Peter Doocy, well, what happened to the Epstein client list? I mean, Pam Bondi mentioned it over and over again. She said she had it. She was putting it on her desk. She had it on her desk. She was reviewing it. Suddenly now it doesn't exist. It never existed. What happened? Listen now to Caroline Leavitt, essentially now walking the plank. Roll cut 30, Mike.
So what happened to the Epstein client list that the Attorney General said she had on her desk?
Well, I think if you go back and look at what the Attorney General said in that interview, which was on your network, on Fox News.
Got the quote.
Go ahead.
John Roberts said, DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen? And she said, it's sitting on my desk right now to review.
Yes, she was saying the entirety of all of the paperwork, all of the paper in relation to Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. That's what the Attorney General was referring to, and I'll let her speak for that. But again, when it comes to the FBI and the Department of Justice, they are more than committed to ensuring that bad people are put behind bars. They have an operation going on right now called Summer Heat, which has our murder rate trending in the lowest direction in United States history. Their emphasis on violent crime and locking up violent criminals has led to the arrest of 14,000 violent criminals. That's a 62% increase from the same time period last year. So this Attorney General and the FBI Director are committed to putting bad people behind bars where they belong.
Spin. It's just spin. It's just all spin. So notice now, It's no. She didn't mean the client list. No, she just meant all of the papers involving Epstein's crimes. That's all. That's what she meant. There's no client list. What client list? Okay, fine. Then release the papers. Okay, fine. Release the files. Let us judge for ourselves. Release them. Well, we had to redact all the names of the victims and their images. Fine. I take it now they've been redacted. So you've had how many months now you've had this in your possession? Fine. So now release the files. You promised you would. Release them. What are you afraid of? So I still don't buy the spin. And then, honestly, well, they're talking about, which I support, the illegal immigrant crackdown. And they're saying, well, we're arresting all of these illegals. Yeah, but we're not talking about the illegals. We're talking about very powerful people, high up in government, deep state criminals, Democrats, Republicans, Hollywood personalities, people in corporate America, in the music industry. I could go on and on. So don't talk to me about, yeah, of course, we know you're cracking down on crime on the streets, but I'm talking about in the upper echelons of power. Now, let me make a prediction right now, okay? And you can hold me to this. With Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, and Dan Bongino, not one Democrat's getting arrested. Not one. Not one Biden official is getting arrested. Not one deep state criminal is getting arrested for all of the crimes that took place, whether it be on the Russia collusion hoax against Trump, on the Hunter Biden laptop, on all of the crimes committed during the Biden years. No one is going to jail. No one is going to be prosecuted. No one. To quote Kash Patel's book, Government Gangsters, not one government gangster is going to go to jail. It's pretty obvious now. Okay? They're there to go along to get along. They're not there to drain the swamp. So no one's going to be arrested of any consequence or any significance or who held any kind of power. I think it's now pretty obvious. Now, super quick. What another scandal among all the scandals regarding this Epstein cover-up is this ridiculous claim that he committed suicide. Now, as I've mentioned, you have the nothing adds up. They removed a cellmate of his conveniently that very night. You're supposed to have 2 cellmates in every cell. They removed one. Why? They didn't give us an answer. Then they claimed that certain cameras positioned right in the jail, right across from the jail cell, suddenly, shazam, they didn't work. They weren't able to get any surveillance footage whatsoever. So the cameras now suddenly don't work. And then there was not one, but 2 guards on duty that night. And guess what? They both fell asleep. So they had no idea he was, that apparently he was strangling himself with his own bedsheet. Okay? Now they claim, guess what? No. We said the cameras weren't working. What the hell were we thinking? They found the camera that does work. And this shows conclusively, they say, that Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. Okay, so what does the camera show? It's apparently, according to them, 10 hours of footage of a hallway in which the special housing unit connects to the corridor whereby Jeffrey Epstein's cell was located in. So it's not the actual cell or him in the cell. No. It's just a hallway that connects the special housing unit to the corridor in which his cell was located. And they say, here it is, 10 hours of straight footage.
And there's somehow, this is like their smoking gun. Meaning, well, nobody walked in, nobody walked out, nobody walked into the corridor, nobody walked out of the corridor. But now it's been found out a full 60 seconds, and this is now indisputable. 1 minute has been edited out of this 10-hour footage. Again, this is not quote-unquote conspiracy theories. Literally, 1 minute is missing. Why was a minute edited out? Why? Can somebody answer that? Why was 60 seconds edited out? Can somebody answer that? So, if this is your small... By the way, I thought they were going to show us, because they said, no, we've seen the footage. We can see him in his cell. We can see him hanging himself in the cell. I always said, well, just release it. Oh, it's too gruesome to see a guy hang himself. Fine. Just show me him in the cell starting to wrap his bed sheet into a noose. We don't actually have to see him hang himself. Just him grabbing the bed sheet and starting to twist it into knots and turn it into a noose. That's all. Just show me that. They don't want to do it. So this is apparently, so you're staring at a freaking hallway for 10 hours. And they're like, this is it. This is it. This is the smoking gun. And now all of a sudden, 1 minute is just conveniently gone, edited out, disappeared. Come on. Come on. You think we were born yesterday? This is such a horrible cover-up. This is such a blatant cover-up. As I said earlier in the show, but it bears repeating. Honestly, it's insulting to our intelligence. You know, look, I got to tell you, say what you want about Vladimir Putin, okay? When he gives you a BS story, it's a good BS story. It's a good cover-up. There's a couple of layers to this. You got to kind of work at it a little bit. It's as if they're lying to our face. They know they're lying to our face. We know they're lying to our face. And they know that we know that they're lying to our face. 617-266-6868. Keith in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Keith, and welcome.
Kuhner, no bull in the bulldozer. I've loved you in the morning. I've loved you in the afternoon. And sometimes I've even loved you at night in a sexual way.
Keith, buddy, what's on your mind? What do you make of this, my friend?
The Franklin cover-up by John DeCamp in Omaha in the late 80s. This whole mess stretches back to President Truman, whose biggest regret of office to his dying day was not murdering a bunch of Japanese children. His biggest regret to his dying day was signing the National Security Act of 1947, which took the OSS from World War II and created the CIA and all other security agencies. There are now about 30 of them in Washington. And he was afraid what they would turn into with black budgets, secrecy, guns, money, and an ability to overthrow governments worldwide. He wrote an editorial the morning after the JFK assassination, citing the CIA was probably behind JFK's murder, and it ran in the Washington Post the morning or this afterwards, and it's never been seen again. Our whole government is run by the secret agencies in Washington and has been for a very long time. And they've got ways of handling do-gooders like you who are going to change things. they can handle you very easily. I'm sorry, nothing personal here. I'm talking about myself.
No, Keith. I mean, look, really. I mean, they can. They'd shoot me. Oh, really? Just one shot to the head or whatever, and make it look like a suicide. They do that. I don't mean to cut you off, Keith. I'll let you finish your point, obviously. But no, you're right. They can, someone like me, they can make it look like a suicide. I think look, honestly, look what they did to Epstein. I mean, the guy was a billionaire. To me, clearly a CIA operative, a Mossad operative, an FBI operative. There's no question. And when he was no longer useful to them, they had him arrested, and then they made it look like it was a suicide. And, and they do this all the time. Look at Seth Rich. Everybody's forgotten about Seth Rich. Seth Rich was killed. There's no question Seth Rich was murdered. I mean, you're mentioning John F. Kennedy. You're going back, many, many years, and you're right. But I'm just saying, just even more recent. Look at Seth Rich. And they made it seem like it was just some kind of a random killing, late at night by some criminal who they've never caught and they never will catch. But to me, it's obvious. He posed a real danger. He was a do-gooder, as you put it, and they got rid of him. I'm snapping my fingers now. I mean, it's easy. Easy as pie, as they say. So, no, Keith, you're right. That's why most people are very, very afraid. Keith, if you remember, at the very beginning of Trump's first term, okay, this was 2017, when he fired Comey as the FBI director, and Schumer was caught on a hot mic. And this is Schumer now, okay? He was one of the most powerful senators. Whatever you think about him as a person, he's one of the most powerful senators in the Senate. Okay, one of the most powerful men in the country. And this is what he said. You don't fire those guys. I'm almost giving it to you verbatim. You don't fire those guys. You don't mess with those guys. Because they can hurt you and get back at you 6 ways to Sunday. He's basically saying what you're saying. They're a shadow government. Truman created a Frankenstein's monster. They work behind the scenes. They're accountable to no one. They're swimming in money, guns, power, technology, eavesdropping, surveillance, satellites, you name it. You don't mess with these guys. And he's basically saying that Trump was a fool, an idiot. Saying, you fired Comey? Oh, you're going to reap the whirlwind. And in a way, Schumer was right. Now, I can't stand Schumer. But I'm just saying, in a way, he was right. Because look what they did to much of Trump's first term. They sabotaged it. They framed him as an agent of Russia. And then they leaked to the media. And then they sicked Robert Mueller on him. And he spent most of his entire presidency just trying to politically survive. And we're talking about, in theory, the president of the United States, who's supposed to be the most powerful man in the world. Right? He's the leader of the free world. He's supposed to be the most powerful man in the world. And they hobbled and paralyzed the president for almost 4 years of his presidency over a lie. And they're like, you're going to fire one of our guys? You're going to take out our FBI director? We're going to show you who runs this town. And that's why Trump said, I wanted my loyal people in there this time. Now, his loyal people, yeah, they may be loyal to him. But I'm telling you, he's got to get people with a little bit more of a thicker spine, a stronger spine. Because what I see now is surrender. I look at Pam Bondi, I look at Dan Bongino, I look at Kash Patel, and the question I have for them is, and who have you arrested? We're still waiting for the arrests. We're now into July. Don't talk to me about illegal aliens. That's ICE and that's Tom Homan, okay? So don't talk to me about that. I'm asking about or winning Supreme Court cases, okay? It's important, but I'm talking about, give me, is Brennan in jail? Has he been arrested? Has Clapper been arrested? Has Comey been arrested? I don't care. Take anybody. Has McCabe been arrested? Any of them.
All of these people that committed crime after, I'm not talking Hillary Clinton, I'm not talking Merrick Garland, forget all of that. That's too much for them. But how about Brennan now has been caught lying under oath. Again, they got him lying under oath. Again, that's perjury, my friend. Are you going to put the handcuffs on him? No. So is one deep state criminal going to be arrested? Just at this point, I'll settle for just one. Keith, the answer is obvious. They're above the law. No matter what crimes they commit, they never get arrested. Final word to you, Keith.
Don't forget, they even took a couple of shots at him, too. And the question of the success of the Trump presidency, who I support, is he going to do something about this ongoing coup d'etat? He's not out of the woods yet. He's still got charges pending. He either has to go after these guys or it's the end of America in a lot of ways. He will have conceded to the silent government, the security agencies, and their benefactors and financiers, which are probably the deep state globalists, the Soroses of the world, and there's more money in the world than you can possibly imagine to pay for this kind of stuff.
Oh, Keith, really good call, and very eloquently and very powerfully said. Thank you for that call, Keith. 617-266-6868. Look, you may disagree with me. I'm just, giving you my honest opinion. Look, nothing against Pam Bondi. I'm being serious. Nothing against Kash Patel. Nothing against Dan Bongino. But you got to get 3 warriors in there. And I'd rather that you reshuffle the deck now. There's still 3.5 years left in his presidency. We can still take on the swamp and beat him. We can still take on the deep state and beat him. But you got to have warriors. You got to have pit bulls. You got to have fighters in there. You got to have a Matt Gaetz. You've got to have a Paxton. You've got to have, in other words, you got to have people almost like snarling dogs. Like they'll bite your head off. That's what you need. You need warriors. You need fighters. These guys are talkers. That's what they are. They're the guys, last call at the bar. Okay? With the biggest mouth. That's what they are. And to me, reset now. Because all you're doing now is at best, all you're doing now is wasting time. At best. 617, just my opinion. 617-266-6868. Bob in Raynham. Thanks for holding, Bob, and welcome.
Hey, Jeff. How's it going?
I'm good. How are you, Bob?
Good, thank you. Hey, I do believe that I don't believe any of the people that get into these positions really understand what they're getting into in the evil that they're up against. Now, Bongino and Patel and Bondi probably all have the best of intentions. But then maybe one day, they get a anonymous phone call, and someone says, hey, I see your wife's, she's going out with the girls Friday night. I mean, we're all tough guys, man to man or whatever, but when our family and our children get involved, we turn into jellyfish, and understandably so, because, how we all feel about our wives and kids, but these people that they're up against are so evil, they would do anything. And they know it. That the evil that these people are up against is we can't even imagine how evil they are. But they're you said it earlier, I think they're ruthless. They'll do anything, and once they put that thought in your mind, you're done. You're a jellyfish. So I actually think that these folks, when they're selecting these people, they almost have to be like career military men with like almost no extended family or anything, because they can use that against them in a second, and I think most men would cower to it.
Well, Bob, look, let me be very candid with you. I've always said this. That's my Achilles heel. And I don't mean this in a bad way. I mean, I love my wife and I love my children. And I would do anything to protect my wife and protect my children. I've always said that. You're completely right. And, you know, I don't want to get too theological now, but one of the big arguments that the Catholic Church has used historically. Okay, let me just tell you right off the bat, that Conservative Inc., as it's called, in other words, the conservative establishment, Fox News, the Wall Street Journal, National Review magazine, there are now some voices like Ben Shapiro. In other words, people who want to play it safe, people who are part of the establishment, who want to stay in the good graces of Pam Bondi and the Justice Department and the FBI, are now all closing ranks. Now, all of a sudden, after claiming for years and years and years that Epstein was clearly murdered, that there obviously was a client list, that there's no question he was blackmailing people, now all of a sudden they're saying, oh, it's the whole Epstein mystery now has been put to rest. Nothing to see here, folks. Move along. Well, Pam Bondi has spoken. Kash Patel and Dan Bongino have spoken. And notice, this is why the liberal media is being strangely silent about this. They're not really going after Trump aggressively on the whole, oh, he's on the client list, and that's why he's telling Pam Bondi to just shut the whole thing down. Because now they can say, remember, Epstein is their guy. Ultimately, he's their guy. Now, look, I got to be careful how I say this. I have a very good idea. In fact, I have an extremely good idea of who is on that client list. Okay? Let me just put it to you this way. I'm talking 99.99999% sure. I'm not saying there aren't Republicans. There are. But I am telling you, the overwhelming majority are some of the most powerful Democrats in the world, in the country, some of the most powerful liberal, left-wing Hollywood actors and directors, some of the most powerful Democrat donors on Wall Street. Again, I'm not saying there aren't Republicans. There are. But this scandal would destroy the liberal regime, liberal Hollywood, and the entire power structure of the Democratic Party. Okay? There's no question. There's no question. So they're almost breathing a sigh of relief. Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, and Dan Bongino played a game of chicken, and they lost. They chickened out. They blinked. And they just can't believe their good luck. Because all of these names that they feared were going to be released, were going to come out, now are going to stay hidden in the shadows. At least for now. And you've got, again, Conservative Inc., the phony establishment, and these are the ones that are like, and notice, it's all blind faith. It's just trust them. That's all it is. It's, well, I trust Pam. Well, I trust Dan. I trust Kash. Why? Why? Why would you trust any politician? Why would you trust anybody in power? And let me just make one last point. The FBI. You mean the same FBI that literally lied to us about the Trump-Russia collusion hoax? The same FBI that framed Trump as an agent of Russia? The same FBI that illegally spied on his campaign and then when he was president? You mean the same FBI that lied and covered up about Hunter Biden's laptop? Hold on. You mean the same FBI that covered up all of the Biden crime family's connections to communist China? And the bribery and the money laundering and the corruption? You mean that FBI? The one that covered up the stolen election in 2020? That FBI? The FBI that was clearly involved in the assassination of Donald Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania? You mean that FBI? So, whatever Kash Patel and Dan Bongino are telling us, because remember, they're saying, well, we're just telling you what the FBI is telling us. They're basically saying, I'm taking the word of career FBI bureaucrats. Epstein committed suicide. Epstein had no client list and never had one. And Epstein never blackmailed anybody. And we really just got to put this whole thing to bed, and we've got nothing. We have no evidence. We can't investigate anybody. We can't prosecute or indict anybody that was involved in the rape and molestation and exploitation of underage girls and children. You're going to trust that FBI? No. No. Absolutely not. We're not running a cult. This is not a cult. So you can't do the job, step down, let someone who can. Or you're now part of the swamp. Take your pick. Agree, disagree. Linda in Medford. Thanks for holding, Linda, and welcome.
Well, if I was to write the final scenario for all of this, I would say Ghislaine Maxwell will get out of jail. She will move to Europe and write a bestseller. And that's how I see this ending.
Or Linda, you're right, because I think now she's got a very strong argument. You convicted me on sex trafficking to who? To who?
Yep.
Because according to you now, you guys have changed the script completely. Now you're saying there were no clients. There was nobody. So that's number one. Or she may end up dead. Linda, in fact, that's what my wife thinks, Grace. She sent me a text about maybe 2 hours ago on my private cell phone. And she said, Jeff, mark my words. Ghislaine Maxwell is now the last piece. You want to tie up all the loose ends now after what they've now come out with, saying the case is closed and the Epstein files are going to be buried permanently? She said, the only one now that can undo all of this is Ghislaine Maxwell. And she said, you mark my words, she's not going to be long for this world. And they'll do something very similar. Suicide, she was depressed, she was down, couldn't take prison life. And so Grace thinks that either she'll off herself and they'll cover it up. They'll murder her and present it as, suicide, that she offed herself. Okay, that, she was depressed or whatever, so they'll kill her. You know what's interesting? The calls, by the way, have been phenomenal today. Okay, absolutely outstanding calls. But no one has actually answered my question. It's been like, 3 hours and 34 minutes since the show began. And, should Pam Bondi resign? And no one has actually given me a declarative yes or no. Yes, she should, or no, she shouldn't. It's, everybody's talking about, obviously, the Epstein files, the Epstein case, the cover-up, the implications of the cover-up, why for the cover-up, who benefits from the cover-up, who's behind the cover-up. But no one has actually answered the question, which we posed, poll question of the day. Should Pam Bondi resign after now she refuses to release the Epstein files? Yes or no? I'm just curious. 617-266-6868. I say she should, but that's me. I want to hear from you. Dave in New Bedford. Thanks for holding, Dave, and welcome.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm going to come at this from way out of left field. Remember we all saw Jeffrey Epstein getting hauled out on the gurney after he was murdered or died or committed suicide or whatever?
Yes.
We all saw the pictures, the videos of it when they wheeled him out on the gurney. And I have one question. Way out of left field, I'm going to come with this question. When was the last time you saw a dead body on a gurney where the head was not covered. And I remember that face on Jeffrey Epstein when they wheeled him out, and he had that little smirk on the left corner of his lips there, like he always has in all the pictures. I'm going to say he's not dead. They got him out of there, and they got him whisked away somewhere, and he's like a Whitey Bulger, kind of hiding out somewhere,
Now, Dave, I'm just curious, where do you think he is, Dave?
I couldn't even begin to guess, and that's why I think Pam Bondi and Cash Patel and these guys, they understand more than we know about this. That's why I'm going to say no. Don't resign quite yet. Let's let this play out a little more, because there's more to this than we. The deep state can do all kinds of things. We know that. And they don't go after any of the really bad guys. The Brennans and the Clappers and all these people. We know they're all criminals, but they don't go after them. But, they couldn't get out of the Epstein thing. So they just whisked him away and claimed he was dead, and he's not dead. It's left field. I know. It's the old saying, better to keep your mouth shut than to open it and prove you're a fool, but I saw that, and there was an instinct when I saw it. How many years ago was that? 3 or 4 years ago?
Yeah, it was 6 years ago. Yeah, that was 6 years ago. Dave, I'll be honest with you. No, I think he's dead. I think there's no question that he's dead. I respectfully disagree. I think he's dead. I don't think he committed suicide. I think there's no way in hell he committed suicide. I could go on and on about that if you wish, but I think he was clearly murdered, and they tried to make it look like a suicide. And the question is why? Why? And I think it's pretty obvious. Epstein could name names. Epstein could name the names of some of the most powerful people in this country and in the world. And so they wanted his secrets to be buried with him. And effectively now, whether we like it or not, that's what Pam Bondi, Cash Patel, and Dan Bongino are now doing. They are burying Epstein's secrets with his dead body. And to me, what is really disgusting about all of this is that they have now made it very clear. No one's going to be prosecuted. No one's going to be indicted. No one is going to go to jail for what was done, outside of Ghislaine Maxwell, obviously, to those thousands and thousands of children and young underage girls. So again, there's one set of laws for you, for me, for the rest of us, and there's another set for the elites. And they think they're untouchable. And right now they are. And I'm telling you, this cannot last. Because that's no longer a republic. That's an oligarchy. And that's what we're starting to see develop in front of our country. They steal money with impunity. They commit crimes with impunity. They even rape children now with impunity. I mean, it's like living in Russia or living in China in this sense. No matter how heinous the crime is, if you are part of this ruling elite in some way, shape, or form, the ruling class, nothing happens to you. And that goes against everything that Pam Bondi said she was going to do, what Cash Patel said he was going to do, and what Dan Bongino said they were going to do. And that's why I'm incredibly disappointed in all three of them. And that's why, frankly, to me, if they had any honor, they would resign. But they're not going to resign. That I guarantee you. Dave, thank you very much for that call. I really appreciate it. Jimmy in Dorchester. Thanks for holding, Jimmy, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff. All three of them should resign. Jeff, you believe in the Bible, and I believe in the Bible, and we believe in the Lord. The only person I fear in my whole life is the Lord. Anything I do wrong, I I pray to him at night. But I'm going to tell you right now, he's probably really upset at the three of them, and he's upset at Trump. He saved Trump's life twice. To tell us a lie like this, it's a lie about all of these Epstein people, because right now, the worst thing you could do to a child, and the worst thing, these pedophiles will continue till the day they die, doing what they were doing on Epstein's Island to the young children, these Hollywood, these rich. The rich have money. They can't buy their way to heaven. They can't buy their way to hell. But on Judgment Day, the Lord will come and he'll do his judgment on them. They are going to suffer. And the ones that allowed it, they're going to pay a price to the Lord also.
Well, Jimmy, look, I wouldn't want to be them. Let's put it that way, okay? When they pass away. You're right. I wouldn't want to be them. But no, look, Jimmy, I go back to something you said earlier. These three should resign because they're protecting child rapists. They're now complicit in the crimes of Epstein and all of his perpetrators. And look, I'm sorry. And by the way, remember, these people are still in power. Do we want these kinds of people? I'm not talking about Kash Patel and Dan Bongino and Pam Bondi. I'm talking about all these people that went to Epstein Island. They're still in power. So more children, more underage girls and boys are going to be victimized. But think about the monsters that we have running our society. You can't just separate, you're a child molester at night, but you're a great professional in the day. So, by the way, like, for example, Stalin's henchman, Beria, okay, one of the greatest mass murderers of the 20th century. That's what he did. He diddled kids. 617-266-6868 is the number. Christine in Hanson. Thanks for holding, Christine, and welcome.
Hey, Jeff, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. So I'm listening. I understand all this, the feelings of being furious and frustrated, and I feel the same way. I've been following this trafficking stuff with the Epstein list and everything for years, and all I'm going to say is these are such high-profile cases that you have to think, like, Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, Dan Bongino are taking direction from Trump, and Trump has to know at every turn what they're doing. So in some ways, he's giving them the direction. Okay, so the other thing is you can't really. We don't even have, our court system is so corrupt, and so once you even get these people, these high-profile cases, through into the court system with all the evidence that they have, nothing is going to happen. So before they even do anything, they have to get the court system, they have to get rid of all the corruption in the court system. However long that takes, I don't know. But while that's happening, if they were to show their hand, and I'm just kind of coming at it from a different angle, if Kash Patel and Pam Bondi and Dan Bongino were to show their hand to these high-profile figures, politicians, celebrities, it's possible that they take off and run. And if they were to get them through the court system and they let them go, like what just happened with Diddy, people are going to look at this and laugh. Nobody's going to believe any of it. And they're just going to be let go. Nothing will come of it. So I think what could be happening is we have a situation where they're trying to say, okay, nothing to see here. I don't know that they're necessarily brushing it under the rug, but they could just be kind of saying, not showing their hand, I guess you could say, and just kind of waiting for things to clean out of the court system so they have the proper controls in place to put these people away. What do you think about that?
Well, Christine, the courts have been corrupt for a very long time, and they're going to be corrupt for a long time to come. So if they're waiting for the courts, then that's a recipe to do nothing. You mentioned P. Diddy, for example. Yeah, he skated on the most serious charges. He still may spend a couple years in jail, and no one's ever going to unsee that infamous video of him, just beating the living daylights just beating his girlfriend or whatever, now ex-girlfriend, in the lobby of that hotel. That's going to be embedded in the public's mind. No, Christine, look, let's cut to the chase. Let me just say it this way. I'm only doing this to slightly couch it. There are many rumors that Barack Obama is on that client list. Okay? And I believe those rumors. Let me just say that. Now, if they have videotape of Obama molesting those young girls, I underline the word if, this destroys the Democratic Party. Whether he's convicted in court or not is irrelevant. You release that video, you release those pictures, you release that surveillance footage, it's over. It's over for him, it's over for his credibility, it's over for the Democratic Party. They'll never recover from this. So, to me, I just find it stunning that, to me, if you have the truth, you speak it. And the question I would just ask, not you, Christine, but everybody, in all honesty, if this wasn't Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, but this was George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and say Alexander Hamilton, okay? What would they do? Honestly, what would they do? What would they do? Would they say, well, we may not win in the courts, I don't know, God, I don't know, it may blow up in our face, and what would they do? So what I'm saying is, this is not the action of patriotic truth tellers. And all three of them said, they vowed to us, the one thing they were going to do is be honest with us. That they were going to tell us the truth no matter what the cost. We were going to have transparency. We were going to have accountability. We were going to have justice. And now they turn around and they brazenly lie to our face about one of the most disgusting pedophiles, child molesters in the history of the world, who was at the epicenter of a global sex trafficking network. And we know this because his right-hand woman was convicted of it with over thousands of victims as one of the reasons why she's going to spend the rest of her life in jail. So, Christine, there's no way to whitewash this. And let me ask everybody, if this was Merrick Garland and this was Christopher Wray, in other words, Biden's AG and Biden's FBI director, we would be screaming bloody murder. And we would be right. But now because it's Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, suddenly we try to rationalize it? Don't. Evil is evil is evil. And what they've now done, I hate to say it, but they've now made themselves complicit in covering up Epstein's crimes. Bye-bye.